Welcome back to the podcast, guys. My name is Alan.
My name is Jorge.
And we got a special guest today in the house. He was born and raised in Salem, Oregon.
Yeah.
He's really involved in the community over the years. He's had a lot of success in commercial real estate, which is really special to us because this is the first time that we have a commercial real estate expert in the house. So we're just going to pick his brain today. I think he's got a very interesting story, and we have a lot of friends in common. Shout out to Jose Gonzalez. He's also a friend in common. He watched our podcast with Jose, and he really liked it. So shout out to him. But Curt, thank you for coming on, man. We're excited to have you on.
Hey, thank you guys. This is great. I've done a lot of things around town. I've never done a podcast before. So mad respect for you guys. Been watching your channel and what you guys are doing. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you. I was talking with Alicia because I work with Alicia, and when I told her that we were having you on, she's like, "That's funny." She's like, "We were talking with Curt a while ago, and he said that he was interested in podcasts."
Yeah.
She's like, "But we just didn't really know of any podcasts in town."
Right.
So no, I think this is perfect timing. But how long have you been in real estate?
A long time. So I got my real estate license in 1990.
Okay.
A long time. So 34 years, and only with two companies. So, real estate business is pretty well known for people jumping around different companies, and I've been very fortunate. I've worked at two great companies, and one where I started and kind of grew up and was managing. When I left, I was a managing broker and decided to kind of go out and do my own thing. This year I've done 17 years at both places. So very blessed.
17 at each?
17 at each.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And I love what I do. I mean, a lot of people my age are going to talk about retirement and this. I love what I do, and I love the people that I work with, and I love the people in our organization. So, I just don't think retirement's in my vocabulary. I really love it. I'll slow down, but it's more about work-life balance.
Yeah. Well, let me see where I want to go with this. So, work-life balance is something it's really hard, and for people that own their own business. And from what I've asked everybody, it seems like everybody has a different answer. Work-life balance is different for everybody. I know that you have two kids now. They're a little bit older now.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were getting started in real estate, they were really young.
Yeah.
How did you balance that with the wife and the two kids?
Yeah, it's a really good story. Well, and the other thing, I don't know if it's a blessing or curse. For me, it was a blessing. I was a very late in life dad. So my kids were born when I was 39 and 43. So for me, at that point in my life, I was still going down playing basketball for 2 hours a morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the YMCA.
Oh, wow.
So getting a good sweat on, I was in great shape, and it's really been a motivating factor for me to try to make sure I'm around for my kids, for my grandkids, so on and so forth. So, work-life balance is tough, and everybody has a different motto for that. But I made a post the other day on social media that the average retirement age in the United States for people is 65 years old.
65.
The life expectancy is 76. So we work our asses off our entire lives for 11 years on average of retirement.
Yeah.
Does that sound good to either one of you? Doesn't sound good to me. So my comment was simply an educational one. Surround yourself with great people, great technology, great clients. That's the number one thing. And live your life. I'm very proud. I've people are like, "You're gone all the time." Yeah, I've traveled 15 times in the last 12 months. I have 2 trips coming. I just got back from Palm Springs. I'm going to Virginia and I'm going to Florida here at the end of the month. 2 different trips, 15 times in 12 months. I'm very blessed. For the most part, my clients, if I have a cell phone, a laptop, and a great crew back here, my clients never know that I'm gone. I'm up in the morning working. Doesn't matter. I could be in Hawaii or Mexico or wherever. I'm always up in the morning. I'm always working for a few hours. I kind of set the stage for my team for the rest of the day, and then late in the afternoon, I'm back on the laptop again. So the blessing of being self-employed is it gives you the flexibility to do that. You don't have a time clock. But the curse of being self-employed is you're never truly on vacation.
Well, you make it sound so easy. I don't think I think it took a long time for it was acquired.
No, it took a long time. I had a little bit of a health scare probably 8 or 9 years ago, and that really opened my eyes. It turned out to be kind of a blessing in disguise. But it just is really. I'm to the point now where I do try to travel quite a bit, and from a work standpoint, I try to only work 4 days a week when I'm here. But I tell everybody, and everybody knows in our company, that if I'm in town, no one's going to beat me to the office, and no one's going to work later. And so from that standpoint, I just try to lead by example. But no, I think just having that balance is super, super important.
What's a good spot that you visited? Favorite spot? I mean, it's kind of hard to narrow it down, but
Wow. Well, let me just I'll tell you guys what I've done recently. So you mentioned I have 2 kids. I do, and they are both at Oregon State University. Go Beavs! And my son's about ready to graduate from the engineering school, and with a degree in construction engineering management. Our daughter's going the health route, so her goal is to be a physician's assistant. But this is our very last spring break with both kids in school. So we'd never done Palm Springs, so we ended up going down to Palm Springs. And I got to tell you, do you guys know anything about golf?
A little bit.
I don't.
I'm not good at it, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Ever heard of it? So we got really fortunate. They had the PGA Champions Tour, which is all the guys 50 and above that were down there. And we were going to go to a local haunt one night and go. It's a restaurant on one side and this really well-known bar and or bar on the other side with dancing and DJ and the whole bit. And we were just kind of joking that the PGA Tour is in town. The older guys, John Daly.
Oh yeah,
John Daly, big drinker, big smoker,
I love
big,
that guy.
right?
Big gambler.
We just laugh. Wouldn't that be funny if John Daly was at this place called The Nest? Wouldn't that be funny if John Daly was there? And I'm talking all of our kids were there. And our daughter's boyfriend, who plays football at Oregon State, he was there. And sure enough, there's John Daly in the bar. So if I had my phone right now, we have a picture of us right with John Daly, and he's up at the DJ stand singing songs. So that was an absolute blast. Before that, my wife and I were at our SVN. So our company is SVN Commercial Advisors. SVN International is got 220 offices throughout North America. So we had our annual conference down in Miami. Not a bad place to be. And that was really, really cool. And one of the things that we got to see was there's a company out there, brand new company, and I don't know, I should know the name of it. But they take drones, they take these little mini drones and they light them up and they can synchronize them up in the air. So my wife and I saw this. We were flipping through the TV channels a few months ago and watching an episode of The Bachelor. And you know how they give the roses out on The Bachelor or The Bachelor? They took these little drones and they made a rose. Well, the guy that owns that company was at a conference at the resort right next door. We sat out and watched all these drones do all these. It was freaking cool.
Have you seen that?
not live. I seen it on TV, but I didn't think that was.
It's pretty cool. They do that in Disneyland too.
Oh, really?
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they have the shows at night when it gets dark. Mm-hmm. They have those with drones and stuff too. It's pretty amazing.
Huh.
So those are two trips. We were in Hawaii in the fall, watching two really dear friends of ours get married, and had a Bandon Dunes trip with a bunch of buddies in January, and so yeah, just kind of a little bit of everything.
Nice.
A little bit of work, a little bit of pleasure.
That's right. Yeah. Going back, so have you been in commercial real estate this whole time?
I have. I tell people I'm kind of ashamed to say this. I've never even sold my own home.
Really?
I don't know how to do it. It sounds really silly, but I still maintain there should be a different license for residential and a different license for commercial, because I tell people that it's like, okay, you're residential, I'm commercial. It's kind of like we're both doctors, right? Mm-hmm. But you guys are, I don't know,
a veterinarian.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, you guys are let's say foot doctors, right?
Okay.
Right, and I'm an orthopedist. I'm working on the shoulder, right? Or I'm working on the liver, or we might have MD after our names, but what you do every day and what I do every day. You went through medical school, then you went through your residency to do that. I went through my residency to do this. We don't have a clue what each other does, and that's really the case. Residential and commercial. I don't know what to do, so I've used some really good residential brokers. You've had some really good residential brokers on your show,
and that's why I find commercial so interesting, because we know of a lot of really good residential agents. And I follow a lot of them online, a lot of big agents on Instagram. But I don't hear much about commercial. And when you go on YouTube and you search up commercial real estate, there's not a lot of content on that.
There isn't.
They try to keep it low key.
They try to keep it low key. Yeah.
There's a lot of secrets.
There is. That's what we're after.
We're not
today.
trying to. That just means we're not doing a very good job of it. But yeah. Well, so here's an interesting. You and I were emailing back and forth. There are. So everybody's heard of the MLS, right? That the real estate agents use. In the Willamette Valley, there are 2,200 real estate agents in the Willamette Valley multiple listing service. 2,200
for residential.
Well, just brokers.
Oh, just brokers
that are just in there, right? So that tells you how many real estate agents there are. It's probably the number one profession of anything in the Willamette Valley. 2,200 people doing the same thing, holding the same license. That's incredible. There's really only about 30 to 40 of us that do commercial real estate full time and make a good living at it.
Really?
So think of those numbers, right?
That's huge.
Yeah. And so you're going to see more content because you've got, in essence, 2,165 putting out content on the residential side. There's only 35 of us or so doing commercial. So, it's an interesting. It's an interesting career. I absolutely love it. It's so different than residential.
Looking at it from the outside, would you think that commercial is intimidating?
It absolutely can be. Yeah, you definitely have to. Not everybody can do this. Not everybody can do this. I don't think you have to have a commercial degree to do, or a college degree to do commercial real estate, but it sure doesn't hurt. There's a ton of math involved. I mean, everything we're doing, whether I'm doing a lease, whether I'm doing a sale for, let's say, a dentist looking to buy a building for themselves, or we're selling, somebody's selling an apartment complex or a building like this that's full of a whole bunch of different tenants, right? Each one of those are math equations, but on a different level. So, with our business, what I tell everybody, whether you like it or not, you put all the successful commercial real estate agents in one room, and the one thing they kind of all have in common is typically have a 4-year degree, or at least a 2-year degree, and they come from they're all good at math for the most part, and they all come from a competitive background. Some doesn't have to be sports, but a lot of it is, and so it's really interesting, and it takes you and I had talked about people to get into real estate. What's the easier thing to get into? I've always told everybody, if you want residential, you're going to make money sooner because of the friends and family aspect, right? Everybody's looking to buy a house for the most part. Everybody kind of has a desire to own a house. Well, not everybody has a desire or a need to do, to have a commercial space. We deal with business owners, general managers, that kind of stuff. So very different field.
What do you think the biggest difference on a day-to-day basis would be between a commercial and a residential agent?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, let's just talk about our time. If you're a residential agent, for the most part, you're never off, right? You're answering, and I've got a bunch of really good friends that are very high producing, some of the best residential agents in this marketplace. They're never off. I mean, they're on the phone. I was at dinner with one last night, right? And unfortunately, he's got to get up a couple times and leave the table because one case it's a client that has to do something, but he also owns his own company. The other case, it was a broker talking to him about maybe coming over to his company. Well, you got to take those calls.
Yep.
Commercially, it's very different. I am in my office, I'll say it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I'm in my office typically by 7-ish. But that's the reason I chose commercial, is that my background, before I got in, I was in the lending institution, banking. I dealt with business owners. I dealt with commercial stuff. And that's where I wanted to be. So I really had no desire to work 7 days a week and have my phone on until all hours of the night. I wanted to work Monday through Friday, and doesn't mean I don't work nights. I don't work weekends, but that's on my time. That's when I want to go in and update my database. I need to do some paperwork. I need to write that offer that somebody's expecting from me on Monday morning, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's the difference.
Because I've been thinking about it, and when I think residential or commercial, I just feel like commercial just has a lot less space for error. Like,
Absolutely.
your errors are going to cost you a lot more in every way. possible versus residential. So I feel like if you mess up in some way and you lose a client, yes, a house could. A house is probably gonna run you 4, 5, 600,000 now. But if you're dealing with commercial, that could be a couple million dollars. So you really have to be on your toes and just really know everything about everything. And there is, because people that are buying these commercial buildings, you were saying a lot about numbers. They're asking about square footage. They're asking about if they're leasing it, what the profitability would be. Like, there's just so much to it.
Absolutely. So I'll just make this real interesting. So one of the things there's a lot of really good commercial real estate practitioners in the Mid-Willamette Valley. There really are. And we're friends with everybody. But yeah, it takes a ton of education, very specific education, because, if you screw up on a house, right, I sit on the State of Oregon Professional Standards Committee, and for whatever reason, we just don't ever see grievances on the commercial side. So most of what we see are residential. But you're talking about maybe an easement that the agent didn't know about or didn't disclose, or the fence is on the wrong side of the property line, or something, right? But there's an easy monetary fix to that. Commercial is very, very, very different. So as an example, this building that we're in right now in downtown Salem, I don't know how many tenants are actually in this building. It's a mixed-use building, so you got commercial and residential, and there's probably 40 or 50 tenants in this building, right?
Yeah.
So an example of what we have to do is we have to take a look at let's say the building, we were asked to list the building for sale. In our analysis, we've got to know how much the commercial suites are getting in rent. We have to be able to decide and counsel the clients. Do we think that that's in line with rent or with market? Are you a little over market, or are you under market? If you're under market, should we adjust those rents before we come up? And you've got commercial tenants in this building and residential tenants in this building. And so then we're taking a look at then the residential side. Same thing with the rents there. Where's your default? How many people are late on their rent, right? And then the big one is, what are your expenses? You have to know a building like this, what typical expenses should run either on a per square foot basis or a percentage of your income basis or blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot to it. And then on top of that, once you kind of figure out what that bottom line is, you have to know, based upon your experience and your ability to do research in the market, where other buildings have sold that are comparable to this in terms of a yield on cash flow. Mm-hmm. And so you can see it. There's a lot of math that's involved. Yeah. And you're right. If we screw up on the math, worst thing is we don't get the listing, mm-hmm. right? But if we screw up on the math, that could really cost our clients tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so, yeah, it's complicated stuff.
Yeah. Jeez.
You got to be ahead of the game, one step ahead.
You have to. So when you said there was only like 30 or 40 agents in the commercial side that are kind of moving the needle, is that just in the state of Oregon, or just like
that's just in the Mid-Valley?
Okay.
Yeah, and so I would say, basically Marion, Polk, Lynn, Benton counties.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So there's a couple. Nick Williams in our office, who also has shout out to Nick. He has a radio program on KYKN. Nick puts together a meeting called our High Tides meeting, which is, the old saying is a high tide raises all boats. Mm-hmm. And so I love that name for the meeting. But this is a group where all the local commercial real estate agents get together and share best practices, share what they've just put on the market, or any problems they're having or any needs they have. And it's just this great think tank of information that makes everybody smarter, right? If we all become smarter, then we all just kind of raise our boats, right? We do a better job for our clients. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do that kind of stuff.
It sounds like it. Well,
do you have any advice for someone that's trying to get into commercial real estate?
Sure. That's a really good question. I think it's the same thing as residential as well, even though the businesses are very different. First thing, if you're looking to get into commercial real estate, and assuming you've gone through and that you've made the decision, I want to go commercial versus residential, the first thing you've got to be looking at is training. Mm-hmm. When I first started in the business, I literally was given a desk, a telephone, a phone book. Most people don't know what those are anymore. A phone book, And I was simply told, take a pad of paper, write down the top 100 names of people you know in the community, call every single one of them, and say, hi, it's Curt. I want to let you know what I'm doing. I've got into commercial real estate. Here's what I'm focusing on. Is there anything I can do for you? No. Do you know anybody that I should put on my list that I should be calling, right? Oh, great. Thanks. I'll put them on the list. And when you get through with that 100, maybe you've added 10 or 20 more names. And when you get through those, you start at the top and you work. That's how I was trained. That's all I was given. It's so much more complicated on that. So the biggest thing that I would tell everybody is make sure that you're going to work for a company that offers tremendous training and tremendous mentorship. Doesn't just say, hey, bring your license over, good luck. We'll show you how to put a couple deals together, but good luck. So that's the number one thing.
That's crazy. I couldn't imagine just cold calling just 100 people in your community just like that. Like, I feel like a lot of people would just hang up on you. Maybe they were nicer back then when we didn't have social media and everything.
Again, these are people. Again, I grew up in this town, and so I have really super deep roots. And I had a dad that was self-employed. Of all things, had a hardware store, commercial hardware store.
Commercial.
Commercial hardware. So, I was very blessed that I knew a lot of people in the community, largely through my folks, and those were, and I shared the list with my dad, and he helped put some names on there for me. But that was really it. I called, and I knew these people, and they knew who I was. So it wasn't a cold call. But I got to tell you, I hate cold calls, and I tell all of my people, don't ever make a cold call. People don't want to receive them, and you don't want to make them, right? So from my standpoint, I always tell everybody, make a warm call. Well, what's a warm call? A warm call is. Give you a great example. So one of our newest advisors, her name is Elizabeth Infante. Elizabeth is kicking butt, taking names. She is the only bilingual full-time commercial realtor in the entire Willamette Valley.
Oh, geez.
So it's been awesome for her, and it's been awesome. It's been a great tool to have her come to work. She's been with us for just short of 2 years now. It's fun for me to see all the other realtors in the marketplace are calling her, saying, "Hey, I've got this client. He's Latino. He owns this business. He needs to grow. I don't speak Spanish. He or she will speak English, but they're not very good at. Would you come in with me and help me with this client?" So she's just done a great job. But her focus is on retail. Okay. So what I've told her is, what would you rather do? Would you rather pick up the phone and call somebody and say, "Hey, my name's Elizabeth. I'm with SVN Commercial Advisors. I'm calling about your retail building. Would you be interested in selling?" Or would you rather call that person and say, "Hi, my name is Elizabeth Infante with SVN Commercial Advisors. I specialize in retail properties. I'm calling about your property on Commercial Street. I have an updated newsletter about the trends that are happening on the retail side of real estate throughout the greater Salem-Keizer area, and I wondered if you might like a copy of that." Well, of course I do, right? I own a building, of course. If you're going to tell me where rents are going and comparable sales, that's the easier call. And it's 10 times more effective than cold call. So.
Yeah, because you're not selling them anything. You're not asking anything from them. You're giving them something for free, essentially.
So if you look at the name of our company, everything we do is, say everything. Most everything that we do is very strategic. So the name of our company is SVN Commercial Advisors. Right? When you look at our people, you'll never see the terminology broker. You'll never see it. I'm a principal broker, right? That's my official terminology with the state of Oregon. You'll never see that term anywhere. What you'll see is when you come to work for us, you're an associate advisor. You move to an advisor. You move to a senior advisor when you've had the tenure, the seniority in the business, and the education and the results to back it up, and I'm a managing director. So for us, we tell everybody, be advised. Get out there and get the education. Don't just be an order taker. Get the education where you can really advise your clients, because let me tell you, in this business, if you do the right job advising your clients, and sometimes that advice is to tell the client, "No, I don't think you should do this. I don't think you should lease that. I don't think you should accept that offer. I don't think you should buy that." If you do the right job advising your clients, the transactional side of the business will take care of itself, and you've won a client for life, because you're giving them your advice, and you're backing that up with your education and telling them, I don't think you should do that. Here's why I don't think you should do that. You've won a client for life.
Yeah, that's huge. It's a good relationship to have to start off with too.
Well, that's part of, again, I've been in the business long enough, and knock on wood, I've got great clients because I've gone to great extents to get a ton of education. Most of that education is not offered here in Salem. I have to travel for it. It's important to get designations. It's important to go to these classes where you can learn that upper ed stuff. It's kind of like getting your master's or your PhD, but in real estate. And I've got some amazing clients that are incredibly loyal to me. So as I get older, I can just trim that list of clients down a little bit more and more and still have that great work-life balance that we all want.
Exactly. Going back to, I forget her name, the agent you just mentioned, it was bilingual.
Elizabeth Infante.
What do you see, like, how do you see it going? There's a lot of Latinos now, obviously, in Salem or in Oregon. Do you see a big market for that or not yet? Maybe in 20 years?
I think it's a growing market depending upon where you are. I think the last number I heard is Marion County, for example, in total is about a quarter Latino. Right?
Okay.
But you get into certain pockets, you get east side of Salem or up in the Woodburn area, it's 40% or more, right? So I think there's a huge need for that. The reality is, if you look at the statistics, most of the business that the Latino business community is doing is still relatively small, right? You're trying to teach people how to grow their business. But boy, she's getting into it at the right time. She comes from a criminal justice. She worked for Marion County Circuit Courts and is very, very well networked. So I think that she's in it at the right time. I think she's going to be really paving the foundation for more folks who speak Spanish to get into it. Yeah.
That's kind of what I meant, because I know there's, in every business or at least or city or town, I noticed that sometimes if you get in at the right time, right, and whether it's 90s or 80s or something new, maybe it's not that big now, but maybe in 20 years she's probably going to be the top dog or something. So
I agree with you completely on timing. Because one of the things I tell all of our folks is another thing a smart business person would do. It doesn't matter what business you're in but in real estate, commercial real estate, the most important thing your first year, 2 or 3, is to get in and just learn the business, right? Learn the business, start developing a client list, and get a number of transactions under your belt. The smart people will then look at the market overall and say, where are the gaps, right? Where are the areas that are really, really well serviced? But more importantly, where are the gaps? Where are the needs? Where's the trends? And how can I position myself in an area where there really isn't any competition and succeed? That's how I did it. I started specializing in office buildings when I was probably in my 4th or 5th year in the business. And the people that I have the most respect for the industry are the ones who really, they have a strike box, right? If it's outside of it, they refer it. They just don't work on it. They stay within their lane. So.
What did you see in office space that caught your attention?
A desire for me, really, honestly, and no one else is doing it. So back when my first few years in the business, the only person that I knew, let me go a different route. The person that I had the most respect for is a guy by the name of Doug Nelson. Doug was at the time probably in his early 60s, maybe, but Doug had spent a lifetime in the business only doing apartments. That is all he had done. He was the guru.
He would buy and rent apartments?
No, he's a broker.
Okay.
That's all he would broker.
So-
All he would broker was multifamily stuff, right? If it was office or industrial, he had his own company, but it was in the same building as the company I worked for. He would always walk across the hallway and say, hey, I got a retail lead, or I got an industrial or an office or whatever. He put out a quarterly newsletter. He tracked where the rents were going. He tracked what sales prices, if you had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment complex that was 20 years old or newer, he could tell you right where those units would sell for. And he could tell you right where your rents should be. And I just had mad respect for that. So I came from a banking background where I had a lot of exposure to office buildings as my career. And my first few years, that's where I found most of my transactions, where I just felt more comfortable with that product. So that's what I started. And back in the day, before technology, really big technology, I bought myself a really nice camera. I went out and took pictures of every office building in the greater Willamette Valley that were 10,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet and above. I took them down to wherever, Rite Aid, or got the film developed.
Yeah.
And I had 2 pictures taken of each one. I had one for myself for a little 3-ring binder that I had. This is back way before Excel. And the other one, I taped my business card to the back of the picture, and I sent it to the person in the mail saying, hey, here's who I am. I'm specializing in office buildings. I was out on a nice sunny day last week. I took this beautiful picture of your building. If there's any questions that you have about the market, and I got to tell you, my phone rang off the hook.
Really?
Yeah, so it's great. I'm sending stupid little 5x7 pictures to people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that what the guy that did the residential would do?
Well, somewhat. He was doing multifamily. So what he really did is make sure if he knew who all the apartment owners were in the marketplace, he put out a newsletter once every 3 months. That newsletter had details of every apartment that was on the market. It had details of every apartment building that had closed, so people just saw that and they ate it up because they weren't getting that information from anyplace else.
That's awesome. That worked for you like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I tell everybody that comes to work for us, we have really, really good training. But I tell everybody, I did what worked for me. You need to go do what is going to work for you. Because you and I are probably very different people, right? But we both have the one thing in common. We have this drive to be successful. Like you guys, I never would have thought to do a podcast like this. So, that's why I'm so freaking excited to be here today. This is cool. This is a learning experience for me.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. So,
I mean, I feel like a lot of it. It's the little things, the little things that, for example, you mentioned it earlier that you were doing that. Maybe someone else was not doing that. You thought it was a great idea. Maybe else they're probably looking at you. Well, that's kind of dumb, right? That not saying that it was, but they just look at it different. But whatever, like you mentioned, whatever works for you at the end,
yeah.
it's what's gonna take you above everybody else. That's how I see it a lot of the times.
Well, you guys are no different, right? You have a great product here. And I'm sure after I leave today and during the week, you guys are constantly talking to each other about how can we make this better, right? How can we dominate? How can we find that little niche and excel? There's no difference.
5x7 cards, and then just your phone started blowing up. And this was your 4th or 5th year, you said?
Yeah.
4th or 5th year. And then from that, did you just double down on that?
I did. So in our business, I really kind of worked. My business was kind of, how do I say this? I always took little steps to do certain things to help me with my productivity. And so for the first 3, 4, 5 years, I just worked on my own. Did everything manually myself. I came in early. I worked late. I wanted to make sure that all my marketing stuff was done before hours or after hours, because the middle of the day is when our clients want to hear from us. But then I found myself I was putting in 60, 70 hours a week. And so myself and another agent hired a gal part-time to basically be our personal assistant. So I had her, he had her 10 hours a week. I had her 10 hours a week. And I just made we sat down, and just after about a month of her working for us, and I told her, I want you just to work for us and see what we do for about a month, and then I want to sit down and have you tell me, where do you think you can really help me the most? Where can you help me leverage my time? So went from that part-time to half-time to a full-time assistant. I've had an assistant now for probably 28 or 29 of my 34 years in the business. Really? It really helps me leverage my time. But then I've gone through coaching as well. As much as I love coaching other people, I need coaching as well. So I've gone through my career 3 different very strategic coaching sessions, and each one of those has just opened my eyes. Right? You come to work every day and you just kind of do the same thing all the time. I think getting out and getting educated, getting coached is big, because I don't know. It's like taking a lesson in a sport, that whether it's golf or tennis or whatever. Yeah. It's like taking or soccer, taking a lesson to try to show you what you're not doing well and what you can do a lot better. It really opens your eyes. And so I'm a progressive learner. I love to learn. We talked about, I love to listen to podcasts. I love to listen to stuff online, just self-help kind of stuff.
Do you remember who you watch on podcast for real estate? Who do you look up to?
That's a really easy one. It's called the Commercial Real Estate Show. It's audio and video. It's done by a guy by the name of Michael Bull. He owns Bull Realty in Atlanta, Georgia, He's got, last time I looked, he's probably got 70 or 80 commercial real estate brokers and a massive property management department. He is the top of the pyramid when it comes to commercial real estate stuff.
70 or 80 agents?
Agents, yeah.
Jeez.
And it's his own company. Most of the companies, the big companies in our business, are affiliated. Like, right, our companies, our offices, SVN has 220 plus or minus offices in the United States. We've got more commercial real estate offices than any other national company. But we are all independently owned and operated. There's probably 7 or 8 companies that are in our industry that are publicly traded. So there's companies, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, like CBRE, JLL, Cushman and Wakefield, Newmark. There's Marcus and Millichap. There's a number of national companies that are all publicly traded. They operate very, very differently than we do. So we're more entrepreneurial. That's why I didn't want to go to work for somebody else. I wanted to have that. When I did leave my last shop and really evaluated what my options were, I really valued. I was a part of a national company before. I did not want to go out and do Curt Arthur and Associates. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do something that I had a national brand behind me that brought in a tool chest of stuff that I could just get to work right immediately. And from marketing to social media to, bookkeeping, back office type of stuff, had all the tools that I needed. So, yeah, it's all the companies in our industry are very different.
What do you think about media now for commercial real estate?
It's a full-time gig, man. I just don't think that a single person can do it and do it on their own. We got very blessed to recently hire a gal that had been a social media or a marketing director for one of the national title companies here in the Willamette Valley. Mm-hmm. She was looking for a change of pace, so we were very lucky to get her. Shout out to Susie George. Love you. She's down in Eugene and she started her own consulting business, but works for us about half-time and just killing it, just doing a great job. So not only is she doing our company stuff, but she's there to lend a hand with each one of us personally on media campaigns that we want. Now, there's some people in my office that, they're older than I am, that they just really have no desire to go out and become a social media.
Yeah.
But no, it's a big deal, right? I tell everybody all the time, if like when you were probably reaching out to me, you were looking online about me, mm-hmm. right? I'm doing the same thing about you guys, right? Mm-hmm. And I tell everybody, you're a little naive if you don't think somebody's Googling you before they pick up the phone to call you about a commercial.
Exactly.
So I think social media is certainly a part of that. And what I try to tell everybody is, most people in real estate do, hey, I just listed this or I just sold that, right? That's what 90% of the posts are about. Let's try to be a little different. So if you read everything from my resume, my bio on our website to what I try to portray on social media, I try to humanize it. Sure, there's some of that work stuff on there, but we try to humanize it. So if somebody's going to look me up, I want them to get to know more about me and not just, I just sold this or I just listed that or it's important to let people know that you're being successful and you're getting stuff done, but I want them to learn more about me. So that's why social media is a part of it. But you've got to be on LinkedIn. You got to be on, there's just all sorts of different things. And hey, I got this arrow in my quiver today, so that's why I appreciate it.
I think that's what it's about, though. A lot of the times, I think it goes back to sales. People want to be relatable with you, or if they like you, and you're showing who you are, and I think that's kind of, you build a relationship that way as well. So
yeah, we had this lady on a couple weeks ago, Diana Rojas. I don't know if you saw her.
I watched the episode.
You watched
it?
She's awesome. She's awesome.
She's relatively new in the business, but boy, she's having great success.
She is relatively new in the business, and well, the reason why we reached out to her was because like you were saying, people will post sold or for sale, and that's really it. They're not really showing their face. They're not really on the videos, right? And she was always in the videos, and we're like, oh, that's cool. So we invited her, and now she's posting these videos, and she's getting like 80 to like 200,000 views per video. Like,
seriously,
it's insane. Like she's having big success.
I remember you talking to her about one of her posts where she was like dancing with the daughter of a client or something in one of the videos.
That was a meme she posted. That was hilarious.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
that was a meme. No, but No, there's some. She just posted one. I think it just hit over 100. But I think the first one, she had posted a walkthrough of a duplex. It was for an investment property that she
Yeah.
was trying to post, and it blew up, and people were really negative about it just because it was in Salem. Not her, but it was just in Salem.
Really?
And she just embraced it, and it just did like really well.
Those are huge numbers.
It doesn't matter who it is or how famous it is. If you're blowing up, you're always gonna get negative comments on there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it doesn't mean anything. You have to take that with a grain of salt.
I agree.
But she did awesome. Like
Yeah.
she did awesome, and now it's just booming. When we had messaged her, I think she had like 1,800, 1,700 followers, and now she's like at 7,000 or 8,000 now.
That's
like
incredible.
she's just killing it.
That's great. Good for her. That's great.
But see, that's the kind of content that I was trying to look for, because there's a lot of people like her, but not in our area.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yep.
I wonder who's doing that in the commercial real estate space. But I didn't find anyone, not just locally, but
Having Susie on board with us is a big deal, because you can't just make a post and kind of forget about it. You've got to look at the analytics. You got to look at what are you doing? What are you doing to increase your followers? What are you doing to increase your impressions? It's a big deal, and so I know that's a big deal for us. We're certainly tracking what our peers on the marketplace are doing, and we're really trying to treat it and give it the respect it deserves, because it's an unbelievable part. It doesn't matter if you have a tire shop or commercial real estate or doing getting that word out there so you're kind of top of mind with folks. It's all a strategy. Social media is a big part of it.
would you say you're very analytical?
Very, yeah. I tell everybody I'm really good at bringing business in the door. I think one of the better closers that are out there, and I'm really good at analyzing transactions and analyzing real estate. My downfall is all the other stuff in the middle. I can't stand it. I need help. I can't stand it. For me to be at my top, I need help from people doing that. So, yeah, I think I'm very analytical. I think my brain kind of looks at a real estate situation, and there's kind of three ways. If you're an appraiser, you have to look at a commercial property three ways, and I always look at every property three different ways. And what you're hoping is that two of those three ways kind of tell a common story. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I feel like I've got a very analytical one.
Can you explain those three ways that you look at a transaction?
Sure. One is a cost method. Excuse me. One is a cost method. And what you look at is, what would it cost to build this building today? And then back out, where do I think the depreciation is because of the age and the condition and so on and so forth, and try and come to a number that way. Another way is the sale approach. So just like what we all, comparables, right? Oh, the house right down the street sold for this, so my house must be worth that. That's kind of an analogy as well. So if I'm looking to sell an office building or an industrial building, I'm going to be looking for what has sold in the last 6 months that's a comparable type building, and what's on the market today. And the final one is an income approach. And the income approach is, what type of rents would this building produce, and what should the expenses be, and what would that bottom line be? And based upon what we're seeing in the market, that bottom line would translate into a value of this, right? So I'm looking at all three ways, and hopefully two of those ways are going to tell that common story.
Interesting.
Yep.
See, he's very analytical as well. I'm not. I like this kind of stuff just kind of like goes over my head.
But guys, that's what makes you really good partners.
I think
right?
so.
A great partnership is not two people that are exactly alike.
Exactly.
Right? You're going to be butting heads all the time.
Yeah.
You just going to want to be doing the same thing. So no, great partnerships. That's why everybody that works kind of on my team I've been fortunate to have some amazing assistants over the past. They're very different than I am, and that's what I want. So good for you guys.
Yeah, it's funny that how you were explaining the analytics on that. Like that's what he's always looking at, and my brain just doesn't look at it that way. My brain just like, I watch other people, and I'm like, what? How can I make this better? And then I just try to respin it and do it my own way, right? My own unique way. But he's just like looking at numbers and charts and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Just a little different, because
really
for everything you see, there's
different.
something. Everything is strategic.
Yeah.
I mean, from the moment you meet someone, go somewhere, everything, marketing, commercials, everything has been from the same, but there's always different ways of doing it, right? And how to do it, if I'm at the right time.
Yeah.
There's so many variables to this, and I think that's what I enjoy and that's what I like. I like because how do you make it right? How do you make it to different ways and make it your own style? But and it's a learning curve, man. Because every time, sometimes I'm just a little confused, but I think that's why I enjoy.
Well, I'll ask you a question. He's got some strengths, obviously, then that you don't have. He's probably better at certain things than
Yep.
you are, right? Yeah, it's a good partnership. That's great.
That's what I think, and I think he's always said that too. So
One of the things too, I think that he would probably be a really good commercial real estate agent. What he really likes, he looks at like towns in like a long term approach. So like for example with Salem, I mean we're not Portland, right? Portland's
No.
a lot bigger
Right,
and they just
right.
have a lot more different things going on. And he's like, well, what's gonna happen in 100 years? What's Salem gonna look like in 100 years?
Completely different. It's actually starting right now.
That's what he's
saying. In many
saying.
ways, we are a suburb of Portland in many, many ways.
That's exactly what he says, and he was. I forgot why we were looking at something, and I don't know if it was Tillamook. I don't remember, but it was like a coastal place, and he's like, you just don't know what it's gonna look like in 100 years. He's like, that could be, it could be like Seaside is big, right? Or
no one thought of. So at the end of the day, anything that's in Portland that's been there for years, that they've been established, you don't know how they started. They got in the game early. It was a small town. Maybe the person said, you know what, this is a small town. It's not a New York or Chicago. It's not worth it. But I mean, you see it everywhere right now. The population's growing. New development, housing. Downtown, waterfront, everything, new apartments. Eventually, it's just gonna get bigger, and I mean, hopefully, if bigger companies come, it keeps getting bigger. But you just kind of have to analyze all of that.
I tell people that Salem's kind of a suburb of Portland, and some people don't believe me. And I said, literally, park your butt at from 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning, out at the I-5 Kaiser interchange, and watch how many people are coming out of Kaiser, hitting I-5 and going northbound. It's just a cheaper place to live than Wilsonville, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're working on the south side of Portland, it's really not a bad commute. It's 35 minutes, not a big deal.
yeah.
And from what we do, boy, industrial is absolutely, we are a part of that Portland market. There, in the old days, it used to be, oh, we've got this need in Portland, and we'd say, well, we have that building here in Salem. No, it's Salem, right? No, it's not happening. So if you guys, I think everybody knows all the development down where the Amazon is in South Salem off of Kubler, that's called the Mill Creek Commerce Center. That thing has just exploded, and that development all by itself has absolutely put Salem on the map from an industrial standpoint. So, one little tidbit I'll tell you guys. Why do you think the Mid-Willamette? If you look at the Willamette Valley, right, you've got. So when it was built, the Amazon Center in Salem was the biggest building in Oregon. Most people don't know that. You go down to Albany, you have a distribution center for Target. You go over to Lebanon, you have a distribution center for Walmart. These are taking care of the entire Pacific Northwest, Northern California, from our area. Now you've got the new biggest building in Oregon up in Woodburn. So what's the big deal, do you think, between Woodburn down, say, through Corvallis? Why is that important? Why do you think you've seen all these distribution companies come up?
I think it's because we're just in the middle of everything. We're really close. We're essentially on I-5, and we have a big market south of us, and then we have a big market north of us, and I think everything in between as well. I think we're just centrally located. I always, when we would go on like work trips and we would talk with people that were out of state, and they would ask us about Oregon, and they would ask us about Salem, where I live. And I'm like, I was born and raised here. I'm like, I don't want to move. I'm like, I feel like we have the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're an hour away from the beach. We're an hour away from Mount Hood if we want to go to the snow. We have great fishing here. We have great hunting here. We have like everything someone can ask for. Like we're really centrally located.
Agree.
And I think
100%.
that goes to like the distribution centers as well. Like I think we're like in the middle of like everything.
So you said location. That's absolutely right. I'll take it a step further, though. What about the location? The Mid-Willamette Valley is really, really strategic. And the reason it's strategic is because of the trucking industry. Trucks can only be on the road for so many hours a day, right? A driver can only be behind the wheel for so many days. A driver can make it to Boise, Idaho, can make it down to the ports in the San Francisco area, can make it certainly Portland, Seattle, but can make it to British Columbia as well. Wow. All of those strategic things within an 8-hour drive. That's why you have seen such a growth of those distribution hubs. And you're talking, well, I mean, okay, so the Salem building, the Amazon building in Salem is about 1.1 million square feet when it was built, right? Biggest building in Oregon. This one in Woodburn, 3.6 million square feet. On floor after floor after floor. Wow. And nothing but robotics on the inside. So that's, by the way, that's about ready to get fired up. That thing was built and it sat there empty for a year. They built it for downstream. They took advantage of some construction pricing. But I drove by there yesterday. There's cars everywhere. They're starting to really hire up their labor force up there. So that building's going to start seeing trucks come in and out of there really soon.
Dang. The strategies there that people can think of that you just wouldn't have thought of. That's
good.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
And I was gonna ask you about that as well, because I think that has an effect on.
Check the camera real quick, but you can go ahead.
Yep.
I think that has an effect in our market as well. All these people moving into our area, and like for example, Woodburn. I mean, how many jobs is that gonna create? I'm sure that a lot of those jobs are gonna have people moving into town for those jobs.
It's incredible. So I'm very privileged. I currently sit on the board for an organization called SEDCOR, which is the Strategic Economic Development Corporation. We are the economic development arms of Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties. We had our quarterly board of directors meeting up in Woodburn last month, and the amount of growth that's happening in Woodburn is unbelievable. There are subdivisions everywhere. Again, we talk about a bedroom community in Portland. There are so many people looking for a place to live in Woodburn. They're going to have thousands of new people in their population here just in the next couple of years. So it creates some strategic issues, like how are you going to get people on and off of I-5 when you've only got that one interchange, right? So that was my biggest question: is how are you going to handle the cars? How are you going to handle the kids in the schools? So that's a booming market up there.
They already have enough issues with the Woodburn outlet, huh?
Yeah, that's hard to get in and out.
Yeah.
It's popular. That's hard to get in and out for sure.
Man, I didn't think about that. So you were talking about the organization that you're on the board with. I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah,
what the name was again?
Yeah, I've been really blessed to be on a bunch of boards in this community, and I think it's kind of how I've gotten to know a lot of how the entire Mid-Willamette Valley works. But the organization's called SEDCOR, SEDCOR, and it stands for the Strategic Economic Development Corporation. I have a big connection to it because my dad was one of the founding partners of it. These are a bunch of people that were very heavily involved in our local Chamber of Commerce back in the late 1970s, and it was under some leadership that they didn't think it was doing a very good job of trying to promote economic development in Salem, and it was kind of because they thought the chamber was getting maybe a little too big. They didn't have the bandwidth to be able to do that, so they started SEDCOR, and initially it was just for Salem, and then it expanded to become the economic driver for Marion County. And now it's Marion County, Polk County, and Yamhill County. And this is the group that goes out to trade shows around the United States and really advertises all the opportunities about doing business in Yamhill, Polk, and Marion counties. And like if I get a big strategic industrial facility, they're the first people I call because they can put it on a thing called Oregon Prospector, and they'll help me push my listing. So if they get an inquiry from a national company saying, hey, we have a widget manufacturing company that's looking at options, what do you have in the greater Salem area? They're big promoters of our area and trying to not only recruit new businesses to come in, but they'll take existing businesses in Oregon that are called traded sector, and I'll talk about that in a second, but try to help those companies grow. Show them where there might be some grant money, some low-cost financing, some advantages on how to hire labor, the whole nine yards. But their concentration is the traded sector, and what I mean by that is any company that produces something that trades, right? So it can be a lot of our membership at SEDCOR are farmers, people that are growing crops, and it eventually becomes something else, or again, different manufacturing companies. So yeah, SEDCOR is a really big deal.
So you were saying that you guys just had your quarterly meeting, and
Yeah.
the new Amazon facility was a big talk in the Woodburn area. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges and how you guys think that the city's going to overcome those challenges?
The city of Woodburn, the city of Salem.
I would say Woodburn, right? Because
Yeah.
it's in Woodburn, or do you think it would
It's in
also
Woodburn.
affect Salem as well?
Yeah, so what we talked about is there's a number of residential developments that are on the planning stages. The city of Woodburn got up and talked to us and had a map of the entire area. Excuse me. And they were talking about all the different apartment complexes, subdivisions, businesses that are building new buildings up there. There's a huge bakery company that's in I say huge. There's a bakery company up there that's in about 5,000 to 7,000 square feet right now. They're building a new 40,000 square foot bakery facility, right? And they're going to triple the amount of people that are working for them, if not do more. So it's just this big map, and we all were just like, whoa. I don't remember the exact numbers. Woodburn's not going to double in size, but I guarantee you there's going to be thousands of new residents up there. And when you look at stuff like that, you have to have the forethought of thinking, as you guys talked about, 10, 20, 50, 100 years down the road. When I see a map like that, I just think infrastructure, right? How are you going to handle, how's your school loads right now, right? Are we going to max out our schools? Do we need to be looking at building more schools? If you're going to do that, where's the land going to come from? Because of all this subdivision stuff that's happening, don't you need to reserve some land and not let it sell? Maybe this is a school district or city, buy it and hold on to it. The big thing is traffic. I mean, Woodburn Outlet Malls is someplace you really don't want to go during the holidays,
Exactly.
right? It takes forever to get in and out of there. Well, that's the only...
Especially if you're a last minute shopper.
Right. So think about this Christmas season, right? When there's that big backup onto I-5 in both directions, and all the hundreds of trucks a day are going to have to go back and forth from Amazon.
Wow, yeah.
How are they going to get it on and off I-5? Those are the things you need to be thinking about. So I think that I look at that as a glass half full, that I think there's some great things on the horizon for the city of Woodburn and other cities. Silverton's doing some great stuff. There's just been some great economic development down there. That if you've not been downtown Silverton lately and seen the bar and restaurant scene down there is off the charts. And they've got the creek running right through the middle of downtown, and finally some guys like my buddy Ben Johnston has been down there throwing some money into economic development. And it's just it's a really, really great place to live. Really great place to work too. We got some clients that have moved from Salem out there, better labor pool, so on and so forth. So yeah, there's some great stuff happening.
What do you see going on with Salem? What do you see going on with Salem in the short term? I mean, I would say like the next couple years, the next 2 to 5 years, and then 50, 75, 100 years.
That's a great question. I am really a glasses half full type of guy. I try to be that way. I'm not a Debbie Downer. I don't like talking down about things, but I think there's a lot to be worried about Salem right now. In the near term, right? We're all concerned about homelessness, and we could spend a whole hour talking about that, right? We're in downtown Salem right now in an area that's kind of thriving. Downtown streets today, it's Saturday, it's really, really good. But you go 2 blocks north of where we are right now, and it's in a whole other story. But there's I'm excited that there is new ownership of the Salem Center Mall. They're local people, really great guys, and so excited to hear from them about what their plan is for Salem Center. Portland investor who's got a great track record bought the old J.C. Penney building. A couple of local investors bought the old Liberty Plaza. They're going to turn that into a development called the Forge, which will be a mixed-use type of development. There is where the old bank used to be. That's now that crater, that pit, right? Mm-hmm. There's a apartment complex that's going to go right behind that. I think 70-some units. So there's a lot of things happening. But overall, I mean, we need leadership. We really need strong leadership because, I still think one of the things that Salem will kick itself long term is not being able to do the third bridge. Back when the third bridge was up in front of City Council, polls that the Chamber of Commerce did showed over 70% approval that we need a new third bridge. But unfortunately, we had a City Council that didn't feel that way, and so they killed it. And I think that that's it's not the kiss of death, but boy, that is really going to put a stranglehold on our community. And this is a city council that at the time just felt like we need less traffic and more people on bikes and mass transit and that kind of stuff. And that was their reasoning. And God bless them, that's what they felt. But I think the majority of Salem felt differently. So I think that just we're at a point right now when it comes to vitality to deal with the homelessness, people that are on the streets, to deal with infrastructure, traffic. Cities having major revenue issues right now. That's a leadership issue. So I really support strong leadership, and hopefully if we get that, we can see some good things. I like our current mayor a lot, Chris Hoy. Chris is, I consider him a friend, but I think we need somebody in the mayorship that has business acumen, right? As you're dealing with budgets, has got a history of doing budgets and making sure there's balanced budgets, and that I've always been a believer that you don't need a city council that's 100% people that are business friendly, right? Or 100% a city council that are all about bicycles and climate action and so on. You need a great blend of both. And if you get that, then the whole community benefits, not just one section. So that's where I'm really hopeful. We got elections coming up this next year, and I'm really hopeful that we can get a city council that's really fair and balanced and can do some great things moving forward.
Yeah. Does that affect the school district at all? Because I know a few months ago or a couple months ago, it's been ongoing conversation as well, right? With
Yeah,
school?
yeah. We almost lost our teachers to a strike.
Yeah.
And they week before last they averted the strike. So the contract employees for the school district were the first ones to accept a new contract. The teachers accepted theirs here in the last 2 weeks. So that's really positive. The teachers are going to leave the school. I think your question is, does city council impact schools?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it does. And it's directly and it's indirectly. And what do I mean by that? Schools are funded by our tax base, right? So for us to make sure that we're providing adequate funding to our school district, we have to have a growing community, both residentially and commercially. And unfortunately, if you get known as a place where it's really hard to do business, that stagnates growth. Stagnant growth means less money coming in, less money going to schools, less money coming to the city, and so on and so forth. And we're kind of in that mode right now. This is it's become a harder place to do business, a harder place to develop in. There's so many more rules and restrictions than there were even just a couple of years ago. So the direct answer to you is yes, but the result is really indirect. We want to have a place that's safe, that's growing, that is a great place to live and a great place to work. If you do that, schools are gonna flourish.
Yeah. Is there any piece of advice that, growing up, someone told you and you took it with you?
Yeah. Really good question. Probably my favorite question you've asked. So I tell this story a lot on what kind of has made me who I am. When I was I was probably 13 or 14 years old. I don't remember. But it was a Sunday morning. I was reading the newspaper, which is still amazing. I don't think either of my kids have ever read a newspaper, but I was reading a newspaper, Statesman Journal, and as a kid, I was in sports, and I was reading the sports section, right? That's how I found out if the Blazers won or lost or whatever, right? We didn't have the ESPN app at that point.
Yeah.
And I remember just kind of thumbing through some other pieces of the paper, and all of a sudden I saw a picture of my dad. And it turned out it was the business section, and it was an interview with my dad. I was like, God, Dad, there's an interview. And he just smiled, and he'd already read it. He'd gotten up before I did, and he'd already read it. And he goes, yeah, read it and tell me what you think. And that, my dad was super involved in this community, and he had a great quote, because they asked him, why do you do what you do? Why are you so involved in so many things? And his answer was basically, I believe there's about a third of our community that takes from the resources of the community, but never gives back a thing. And I think there's about another third that takes from the resources of the community and gives back an equal amount. So there has to be a third of us that take from the community, but give back infinitely more to make up for those who never give back a thing. That has been a guiding principle for me. And with especially with the way I've raised my kids, with the way that we really talk within our company. We try to follow that ethic. We have a core set of covenants within SVN that we all live by. And I tell all of our people, we're going to take and we're going to give back infinitely more than we take. And that's how you leave a lasting legacy. So that would be the one thing I would tell folks is no matter what, doesn't matter if you're selling used cars or selling commercial real estate, give back to your community, get involved, try to make it a better place than what you found it.
Would you say your dad was a big influence?
Huge. Yeah, huge. Again, remember when I first got into real estate, the mentor that brought me in, the only training I really got initially was make a list of 100 people.
Yeah.
Well, I made a list of about 30, right? Mm-hmm. That's all I knew. And some family friends and everything. And kudos to my dad. So my dad, back when I was a little kid, was president of the Chamber of Commerce. 7 years ago, I was president of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been told that we're the only father-son duo that's ever done that before. So, yeah, I get a lot of my drive. It's what made me want to be self-employed because I saw it with my dad. Mm-hmm. It was what made me want to build a company because I saw him do it. And he was a great dad and just a great member of the community. He was involved in so many things. If you want to hear it later, I've got an infrastructure story that'll blow your mind about the leadership that we had in this city back in the 1970s and what they did with very little money was mind-blowing. But yeah, just super involved. So it's kind of what paved the way for me. Yep.
Do you have any aspirations of a political career?
No.
He said no. He said
I get asked that a lot. Thanks. I appreciate you asking that. First of all, I tell everybody where I live, which is out off of South River Road. I live in this little enclave that's actually outside of the city. So, I could never run for a city position. I feel like I could do a good job at it, but I feel like I'm far more productive being outside the realm of the political arena. I kind of feel like I'm a connector. I've been in this town a long time. I know a lot of people. And I feel like I'm really good at taking a problem and being able to grab some friends that I've made great relationships with and bring them in. So I think I could do a far greater job for this community not serving in a political position, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, some people would love to do it, and some people are like, no, I'd rather do it from afar.
I applaud. It's volunteer work, man. And it doesn't matter if you're chairing a board of directors or you're, like we talked about, Jose Gonzalez, or anybody that has taken the time to run for a position, even if you don't win. What I tell everybody, it doesn't matter if you're running for Senate, being a congressman, state representative, or heck, school board. Just the fact you're running, you're having to take all this time to knock on doors and do what it takes to. God bless you, because a lot of people just don't have the gumption to be able to do that. So I have mad respect for those folks who say, I really want to help. I want to see if I can make a difference. And whether they get elected or not, I'd love you for all of you out there that run for stuff. I mean, I have just nothing but respect for you. All right, so you want to hear the infrastructure discussion?
Yeah.
All right, this blew me away. All right. Salem lost an icon here in the last 6 months. There's a gentleman that his name is Kent Aldrich. Kent Aldrich had a small CPA firm here in town. It's called Aldrich, Kilbride, and Tatone. And back in the 1970s, Kent Aldrich was approached by a number of people saying, would you consider running for mayor? He thought about it. He thought, just like we just talked about, I think I could do a pretty good job at that. So he went to his partner and said, I think I want to do this. I think you need to take over managing the firm so I have time to do that. And so he did. He ran. He got elected. My father was one of many people that he called upon to say, I want to do great things in my term as mayor, and will you help me chair this? Or I have an idea that I want to do that. Will you chair that committee, and so on and so forth? The city of Salem had some excess resources. So the market was growing. There's a lot of stuff happening, and they had a surplus of cash flow. I'm going to get the number wrong. It was $4 or $5 million, right? It wasn't a ton of money. But what they did is there was a group, Mayor Aldrich at the time, grabbed a handful of local business people, the city manager, and they jumped on a plane and went back to Washington, D.C. And they met with the Senators Bob Packwood and Mark Hatfield from the state of Oregon, who were very senior folks back then, and told them, we have all this infrastructure stuff. Salem's going to grow, right? It's going to grow like crazy, and we really need to handle the infrastructure. So we have a little bit of money here, but we're coming back here to Washington, D.C. to see what you can do to help us leverage the money we have and see if we can't get any more money, okay? So that's the genesis of this whole story. They go to Washington, a little bit of money in their pocket, see what they can do. They came back and networked themselves so well. Here's what happened right after that trip for, again, let's say around $4 million. They leveraged it into tens of millions of dollars. Here's what happened. The railroad tracks down by Riverfront Park used to be right in the middle of Front Street. You guys don't know that. You're not old enough to know that, right? They got the money to help move the railroad tracks off of Front Street so Front Street could accommodate more traffic. They got the money to redo the off-ramps from the bridges over the Willamette River. They redid all of Front Street. They built the first parking structure in downtown Salem. They got the money to build the Salem Parkway. They got the money to build Kubler. Kubler didn't even exist. So they got all the money to build Kubler from I-5 to Commercial Street. So all of that from one trip. Kent told me that at the end of the day, all the stuff that they did was somewhere between 80 and $100 million, all from 5 or 6 people jumping on a plane with $4 million in their pocket, going back to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
That's leadership.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yes.
Can something similar to that still happen nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really it's really important if you're in that position, and they know that if you're the mayor of the city of Salem, example, or Dallas or Silverton or whatever, it's super important that you're always communicating with those officials that are above you. So if you're on city council or the mayor of the city of Salem, super important that you have great relationships with all 3 Marion County commissioners. Very important you have great relationships with all Polk County commissioners, because West Salem's 40,000 people, right? That's the biggest city in Polk County at this point now. It's also important that you're very close with your state representatives, your state senators, but also your national representatives as well. If you can do that, then you're constantly communicating. Absolutely, you can leverage opportunities like that all over the place.
Dang.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Did you hear, Jorge, about them wanting to close down the Salem Public Library?
I did. I saw a few things about it, yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
I think that you've got a budget committee right now and council that have some very serious issues in front of them. I'm not a fan of shutting down the library. But again, I think what you're going to end, this is just my prediction, is that you're going to see the library scale to meet the current needs of our community at a financial arrangement that makes sense for the city. So in today's day and age of electronics and everything being digital, I may argue, is there really the need to have the same size library that we had 20 years ago? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I think there are so many other things a library can be. So my guess, and this is just me, I think you will never see the library shut down, but I think you'll see it scale down to a much smaller main location. And my hope is that, and I know there's some money in the city budgets at this point, you'll start seeing branch libraries, small branch libraries out in our community as well. So people aren't having to drive all the way downtown all the time to come to the library.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm in the same, kind of in the same boat what he's saying. Eventually, something has to change. I don't know what it is. Never really looked into it. You know, I don't see it a certain way, but it has to change. But then, you know, a lot of the times, people don't want to make the drive from North. I live in Kaiser, so like North Kaiser all the way over here, go through traffic, and then obviously the people way from South Salem too, or people crossing the bridge during our time. So
Well, this is a big learning lesson for the library leadership as well, right? Doesn't matter who you are, you have to constantly reinvent yourself and ask what's your why, right? So if I'm running the library, I'm going to be asking myself, what's my why, right? I would want to know how many books are in this library that haven't been touched in the last 5 years, right? Those types of things. And what's our mission purpose? It's a community resource, but what's the biggest benefit? Who benefits the most from reading? It's kids, right? We get kids educated at a really young age. That has massive implications throughout the entire community. Crime rates go down, right? People going to prison goes down. The rate of recidivism goes down. Business flourishes because now kids are getting educated, right? They can read, write, they can do math. They're getting their high school, graduation rates going. It just has a massive impact. So I hope that whatever we do in the future, no disrespect to adults, senior citizens, so on and so forth, but I hope that moving forward, the library's main emphasis is to work specifically with the school district on how can we make sure that the kids, the youth in our communities, especially the young kids, we're talking about youth up to grade 2 or 3. There's tons of data out there that kids really need to know how to be proficient at reading by 2nd or 3rd grade. If they can do that, then I always tell everybody I look at things as return on investment. What's the ROI of that? Then the ROI of having a library to work with that to help the school district, raise these kids' ability is you'll never shut it down because it's an important thing to the community.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, that's just me talking.
No, that's great. So I've been reading on the Statesman Journal every now and then that they have some pretty big plans still for Salem to build an arena and more apartments in the
Front Street.
What would you call that? Industrial Front Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
area?
the current home or the former home of Truett Brothers, the cannery, the cannery project down there. I've seen all the renderings. I hope it comes to fruition. I really, really, really do. It's something unlike we have ever seen before, and I guess I'll just simply say I hope that it happens. You have I know the current owners, the Truett family, want to see it happen. Jordan Truett, who's a commercial real estate broker here in town, who's representing the family and on that development, he wants it to happen. He's a huge advocate for it. And the folks that are buying it are huge advocates. Now, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make that work. It's called entitlements, right? And there's a lot of hoops you got to run through with our good friend, the city of Salem. So there's a lot of work. These things don't just happen overnight. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that have to work. But I have a lot of hope in my heart that it can, because that'll do nothing but help the city. That would all be privately funded. Mm-hmm. So. But yeah, having a soccer arena down there, and I think it's 700 or more apartments, and some of the coolest restaurant space that we'll see in the Willamette Valley. I think 10 years from now that could be unbelievable.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood. Yeah. Those would be one of those things that if they did happen, they would just kind of change the way Salem would look like in the next 50 years.
Right.
You're saying 10 years would be a huge.
And just how we're perceived.
The projections of that. Yeah.
Huge.
I agree.
Yeah, I think anybody from outside Salem, if they could come in and see like something like that being built, could sit back and say, "Wow, this city's got their what together."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, if you were at this point, if you were not in real estate, what career would you want to get into?
That's a great question. I've thought about that a lot over my life. I think that I probably would have gone into something like wealth management, so the stock brokerage arena. That's
What about right now, though?
That's not an area I think I would get into these days because of all the online investing and crypto and everything that's going on. But I've got a lot of really good friends that are in that arena, and they do very well, but they love it, and they really love. On one hand, it's the same excitement I get by helping my clients. They really get that same help with their clients. So I'm helping my clients help their businesses, and in some cases investing, but they're strictly investing. So for them being able to get on a wealth plan, that's probably that, or probably the insurance business, something like that.
Insurance business, okay. Would you rather go on a fishing trip or a golfing trip?
Ooh. I'd rather go on a golfing trip that had fishing with it. No, I love to do both. I was just up Plate Oregon Golf Club yesterday. I'm a huge fisherman. I love to fish. I love to drift fish. Just had a steelhead trip here about a month ago down the Siletz River. That was a blast. I love to fish in the ocean for salmon and bottom fish off the Oregon coast and crab. And then I was very fortunate. I got to go to Alaska for the very first time last August, which was just unbelievable. Came home with 110 pounds of fish fillets. 110 pounds. It was just crazy. So, yeah, both two things are passed. Now, if you could throw one more thing in there, I'm a big pickleball player.
Really?
Yeah, I love pickleball.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily the best at it, but I've been playing for 5 or 6 years. So if you could throw in a trip that did all three of those things, I'd be in something.
The dream trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me on. This has been great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
There we go.